Hello, good morning, and good afternoon, and good evening. Thank you for joining me today. It is my pleasure to be with you. My name is Hazem Ibrahim. And thank you so much for joining us this morning and to be on Friday morning with us. This is something very interesting, and I am really grateful that you are with us on your weekend. For those of you who are on weekend, and also I am grateful that we have different people joining me from different parts of the world. Um, Today, I have a very interesting panel, and I am very honored to have them with me. But before I start, I would like to tell you that interpretation is available into Arabic for those of you who cannot follow with us in English. And all you need to do if you are following us in the software is for interpretation, please hover on the screen and click on the headphones icon and choose Arabic. Okay. I would like to introduce myself first before I go to my distinguished panelists. My name is Hazem Ibrahim, and I am an interpreter and a translator and also a journalist. I work at Asharq News, Asharq Lil Akhbar, and specifically in the business department, Asharq Business with Bloomberg. And I am very pleased and honored to have with me today three distinguished panelists, as I said. I have Maya Beydoun, Michael Haddad, and Victor Pineda. And I will be introducing them very briefly. They are very three dear friends to mine. Some of them I know for many years. I will start with Maya, not just because the 8th of March was very recent and not because ladies first, but I started alphabetically. So Maya Beydoun holds a master's in business administration with emphasis on management from the Lebanese American University, LAU, and has 15 years of experience with the United Nations system in the area of project management. She currently serves as a project management analyst with the UNDP's regional program for the Arab states and is leading the Arab Region Youth Art and Music Initiative, AYAMI. In Arabic, it means My Days, this initiative aims at raising awareness about the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, and engage the youth on Agenda 2030. My next panelist with her in the office, my friend Michael Haddad, or Mike. Ahlan, Mike, welcome. Mike is indeed a medical wonder. He's a climate activist. He's a social entrepreneur and a professional athlete. But above all, Michael is on a mission, as he likes to say. Michael Haddad is a man who serves as a Goodwill Ambassador for Climate Action, Regional Bureau for Arab States, United Nations Development Program, UNDP. He is in this position since 2019. Michael shares the passion of walking. It's an irony, of course, because Michael walks in a different way. We are all different. And he takes on physical challenges to call for taking climate action seriously. He purposed his 100-kilometer polar walk for climate action, POWCA, to bring attention to one of the greatest consequences of climate change. He's also very active on that front in his home country, Lebanon. And Michael is closely followed by scientists from the American University of Beirut, AUB, the Lebanese American University, LAU, and other international institutions, because his case will contribute hugely to assistive and ecoskeleton technology, very important technologies for the future of persons with disability. Finally, my third speaker is my very best friend, Dr. Victor Santiago Pineda. I know Victor since 2008 when he visited me in Damascus. Totally different world now. He is a globally recognized human rights expert, philanthropist, and scholar advancing inclusive and accessible smart cities. A two-time presidential appointee on the US Access Board, a senior fellow at the Mohammed bin Rashid School of Government in Dubai, and the founder of Pineda Foundation World Enabled, a global non-profit promoting the rights of people with disabilities. His foundation supports social impact entrepreneurs. Dr. Pineda's work focuses on urban resilience, inclusion, and sustainability. He holds a PhD in urban planning and teaches at the College of Environmental Design at the University of Berkeley or University of California at Berkeley. So as you can see, we have a truly global panelists, and we also have a truly global audience. Victor is joining us from California. It's very late time for you, Victor. Thank you for joining me. Today we will be tackling three issues. We'll talk about disability, past, present, and future. And this will be the first part. In the second part, we will be talking about the post-pandemic world in which we live and SDGs and the relevance of UN SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, to us all, to the survival of our species. And finally, we will talk about smart cities, and we will be focusing more on the specific topic of the session. We will try to dissect it. So I will start first by asking Victor to tell me a little bit about disability in context, in history and in present. Where were we and where are we now? And then we will leave the part of where are we going to for a latter part of the session. The floor is yours, Victor, please.
Thank you very much, Hazem. First, want to recognize that great initiative at this time, a knowledge summit that brings together the best minds around some of the world's biggest challenges. It's not only timely, but incredibly important. So I want to thank the organizers at His Highness Sheikh Mohammed for his leadership. I first came to the UAE in 2007 as I was studying the implementation of a very important international treaty. So for us to understand where we are today, I think it's important to understand where we came. And we come from a legacy of systems and laws and infrastructure that had left out a lot of people like me, a lot of people like Michael, a lot of people that did not fit a typical standard body. So we come from a world that was not designed for bodies and perspectives that incorporated an effective and dignified way to live with a disability. So shame, stigma, exclusion, unemployment, discrimination is where we come from. In 2002, I was very lucky to help start in negotiating a UN treaty, which is the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. That treaty had come after nearly 20 years of advocacy at the UN, first developing an international day to highlight the rights of persons with disabilities, and then developing a set of standard rules. Those ultimately helped create the momentum between 2002 and 2007 to create an internationally binding agreement to protect the rights and define how the universal human rights can be implemented for people that might have difficulty seeing, people that might be difficulty hearing, people that might have difficulty caring for themselves. So it was a fundamental shift from a medical model where the individual had to be fixed in order to fit into society to a social model where society had to make adaptations, adjustments to eliminate barriers that prevent the full participation of nearly a billion people, over a billion people, 1 out of every 7 people that lived with a disability since 2007. Over 180 countries have signed this international agreement, and this agreement also became a template or a safeguard to ensure that the Sustainable Development Goals, whose mission was to leave no one behind, incorporated key targets to ensure that persons with disabilities could also contribute to benefit from this massive global transformation that really puts us on the development agenda in a meaningful way.
Thank you, Victor. That's an interesting, short, if you like, short summary of how we moved from, a very difficult time into a less difficult time, I would say, because we are hopeful that we can do more. And I'm glad you.
Sorry, Hazem. One of the things that I think you mentioned is how did we get to that change? In our previous discussion, advocacy, representation, leadership, the voices of persons with disabilities saying nothing about us without us. So
Yes.
These were the kind of transformations that helped make this possible.
Yes, and that's exactly the point I was going to say. Nothing about us without us. So first of all, we are grateful for the summit to have included this very, very important topic, which touches us all, because as you said, 1 in every 5 people on Earth has some form of disability, and disability is not only about the impairment the person has, it is rather the barriers that society creates for those people. Now, if I remove my glasses, I will have hard time seeing you on the screen. But if I put my glasses on, I'm able to see you clearly. So basically, it is this analogy. We need to remove the barriers and we need to make it easier for people to take part. So that shift in burden is very important. But let me pick up on the last point you talked about, the voices that are being heard and the representation. And I want to move to Michael, because Michael, for me, represents an interesting case. You are a Goodwill Ambassador, and you're working, Michael, on climate change, and you are using disability, you are using your case to try to advocate not just for disability, but also for climate change, and I assume other issues too. So Victor was talking about the role of activism. Our role as persons with disability to make our voices heard. So tell me a little bit about this mix, the idea of activism, the role of activism, because here I'm trying to focus on the first word in the name of the session, co-creating, the act of co-creation. So I think you are the best amongst us to tell us about this co-creation, how we can all work together, not just on one issue, climate change or disability, but on all issues. The floor is yours, Michael.
Hazem, thank you so much for this question. First, I want to start by a short remark, because actually directed to you and Victor. I hope that what we are doing today, I'm very sure, I'm not hoping, that we will be sitting together in Damascus and عم ناكل برازق سوا, and we are eating برازق, because this is what we are doing today, to open the path for the futures and for others. From my perspective, and I had a spinal cord injury, but I managed to stand up and walk. Everything that I do is to open the path for science, because it is, I totally believe that we reached a stage where we could science, innovation, technology, and in my case, open the path for a dream to all of us. When I say all of us, I mean people with spinal cord injuries to stand up and walk again. I strongly believe that with science we could do this. This is why I'm walking. So I'm walking using this exoskeleton to develop exoskeleton technologies. But I'm not walking to promote disability. I'm walking to say that if we truly believe in something, we could do it. If we truly put our minds to it, we could do it. And if we want to truly look at disability, today the earth is dying. Okay? And we have to act, and nothing is impossible. This is point number one. Point number two, let us step out of our barriers and think positively towards the future. This is why I'm walking. I'm walking, and when I walk, I'm doing something under the UN umbrella and UNDP. I'm inviting decision makers to communicate together. I'm not walking under my message. Yani, when I walked at Expo 2020 with Maya and all the team, thanks to UNDP, we invited the decision makers, which are CEOs from prominent companies around the world, to communicate. Because Hazem, together, you are asking me, what is this related to disability? I will tell you where is the relation. The relation and the point is we are all in this together. People with disabilities are the largest minority in the world. Okay, 1 billion people. Correct. We are, which means we are a driving force. And from another hand, when it comes to climate change, which is the number one catastrophic problem that is facing humans now at this moment. And let us remember Glasgow, when the Secretary General said, we are entering the point of no return, we are in the danger zone. So people with disabilities, and I don't like to categorize myself as this, I'm a strong believer of integration. That's why I strongly believe in what Maya Beydoun is doing through AYAMI and what's doing this. But from an angle of the most vulnerable people or the most affected people in the society, people with disabilities must be on the table when it comes to climate action and the impacts of climate action. Quickly, Hazem, I know we are on limited times, but there is a few points that Victor mentioned that they are very important. One is the CRPD, which is the Conventions of Rights for People with Disabilities. And thank you, Victor, because this is very important. We in Lebanon in particular is the only or one of the few countries that did not ratify the CRPD, and we are fighting day and night to make it happen because it will offer us a guideline to walk forward. Because if we don't transform the basic needs for people with disability from a philanthropic approach to a legal approach governed by rights, we can go nowhere. And Honi Kamen, there is a small point that I want to put on the table in our discussion. And based on my experience all over the world, advocating for inclusion through technologies, in my case, I believe that there is a gap when it comes to people with disabilities, especially in third world countries. You know, the majority of people in Lebanon, I could say Syria, Iraq, and conflict countries, and especially in the Arab state region, are still marginalized and live under extreme poverty levels. Our laws are unaffected. I could speak on Lebanon. So this is where we have to act. This is where we have to think. I have been integrated with many roundtable discussions. The problems that face disability in Europe are different than our problems. Way different. There is a gap. And that's why, especially through AYAMI and especially through our work in the region, our approach towards inspiring, empowering, and integrating people with disability must have this certain angle. Sorry, Iza, for what happened here, or I overtalked, but thank you so much for this introduction.
Thank you so much. Actually, I am a strong believer in spontaneous talk. We have a structure, we have a title, but let's explore together the topic from different angles. It doesn't have to be, very. I'm a very logical person usually, but for those kinds of events, I like this free flow of ideas because I believe all ideas are relevant and will be heard and taken somewhere. Thank you for your points, Michael. And let me move on to Maya based on what you said. But I want to take a slightly different angle here. We are all talking about integration. We are all talking about inclusion, and we are talking about using multidisciplinary approach. But this sounds a little bit abstract. So let's go into more details. And here I go to Maya. Maya, you have a very interesting initiative called AYAMI, in which you are using art and songs to promote the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And I am also a firm believer in the importance of addressing SDGs because of the challenges we are all facing globally. And this is a summit to share knowledge, as the name suggests. And we all have seen what happened in the last 2 years. I mean, in terms of all the challenges that humanity faced. And so we have to act together. But I believe we have to include everybody. And this should include also practical steps. And I believe that art and music have a very important role to play. It's not just science, it's not just ideas, but also practical things, especially for young people, because education is so important and songs and music are very important tools to reach out to youth, especially through social media. So I want you to tell me a little bit more about this initiative, AYAMI. What is AYAMI and how does it focus specifically on persons with disability? And I am sure you have something nice to share with us. I'll keep it as a surprise. So please go ahead, Maya.
Thank you, Hazem. So, yes, AYAMI stands for Arab Region Youth Art and Music Initiative, and it's a UNDP initiative that was launched in 2019. And it mainly focuses on the SDGs and raising awareness about the SDGs among youth in the Arab region, of course, through using art and music. The idea is to have AYAMI as a platform for our youth in the region, including people with disabilities, to express their thoughts and ideas and to encourage their critical thinking and to give them the space to reflect on the world they live currently and the world that they aspire to. So now the focus on people with disabilities is a new component, and it complements the effort, the broader work of UNDPs. As UNDP has adopted a regional approach for mainstreaming the inclusion and accessibility of persons with disabilities. And it recently established a network, a regional disability focal points network. And this is where AYAMI comes in. So our focal idea is to leave no one behind and to give the space to integrate all youth, whether people with disability or people without disability, to give the chance and equal opportunity, of course, using art. So just if I may say one last thing, so the first step that we did was to present our main multimedia product in the sign language. And then we started communicating with the talents who have disabilities to be part of our community. We call them AYAMI talents. And this is how we are step by step working with them on activities and live performances and multimedia products, which we will see one of them in the coming session.
That's the surprise. So it will be now. We will. What is the surprise?
Okay, so the surprise is it's basically a video, a music video. It's a song that we call that is called Sawiyan. We can play the video, and if you wish, I can talk more about it later on.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go.
If we can please play the video.
أنت وأنت وهم وأنا كلنا جميعنا لا تمييز بيننا لا إنسان فوقنا لا إنسان دوننا بالإعاقة أو بدون على النجاح قادرون
حق العمل دون تمييز، حق الاندماج والدراسة والنجاح، حق الحياة والرجاء والعطاء.
معاً نغير الأحوال، معاً نحقق الآن، معاً نكون أو نكون سوياً سوياً قادرون سوياً سوياً سائرون سوياً سوياً قادرون سوياً سوياً سائرون.
جابرييلا هاي برافو، درج حلو كثير. هذا النهاية تبعتها امبرسيف.
أنت وأنت وهم وأنا كلنا جميعنا لا تمييز بيننا لا إنسان فوقنا لا إنسان دوننا بالإعاقة أو بدون على النجاح قادرون.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Maya. Thank you, and to you and to the team. And we hope to see more of those nice works of art because we all need music. Let me move to Victor for the sake of time. And let me move to the second part of the title and resilient future. Of course, in the very recent past, Victor, which is the last 2 years, the pandemic time, we have seen that the resilience of so many systems has been tested, especially in healthcare systems, care systems that provide services to persons with disabilities. It was a very tough time for us all as a humanity, but more so for vulnerable groups, especially people with disabilities who do not have the means and the resources that, as Michael said, different parts of the world have different resources. So now we are almost coming to a post-pandemic world, or at least we have to prepare ourselves for the post-pandemic world I don't know if we'll have further pandemics, hopefully not, but science says we might. And this is where climate change is important, because if snow melts, we will have more viruses, latent viruses that might come out. So we have to be prepared. So my question to you, to all of you actually, but I will start with you, Victor. How do you see the post-pandemic world, especially that now, I mean, also the advent of technology. I will leave technology to the second part, but like with working from home arrangements, accepting the fact that people could work remotely or could work, you know, in a hybrid mode. Healthcare systems have also changed, more focus on healthcare. Can you comment on those issues and how they relate to persons with
Sure, sure,
disability in a post-pandemic world, please?
sure. Thank you, Hazem. Well, I think it's undoubtedly accelerated a lot of trends that were already happening. It's accelerated inequality. It's accelerated a digital transformation. It's accelerated, both made apparent existing systems, the frailty of these systems. It really was a wake-up call for all of us. It even touched, nearly 3/4 of the world that experienced lockdowns, what it meant to have limited mobility, what it meant to be isolated from those you love, what it meant to have fundamental freedoms or fundamental, opportunities to exercise your own agency denied for a period of time. But what it also did do is it reminded us what it means like to come together, to reach across and find a way to lend a helping hand. There was the largest amount of global philanthropy and donations during the pandemic. It was the largest amount of cross-border communication and collaboration and understanding and knowledge. So it was a period of tremendous change, but it was a period that allowed us to understand and see so many segments of society that were invisible for a long time. For people with disabilities, and for what I call this inclusive innovation, it was also a tremendous advantage. People with disabilities around the world had often and long advocated for flexible work experience, for flexible work accommodations. And now that this has become the norm, in some countries we're seeing a rising increase in the employment rates of people with disabilities. Another thing that we're noticing is a broader understanding about those highest risk and a broader understanding of reasonable accommodations. For example, we helped respond to the pandemic through my foundation by helping to train mayors all over the world and how to have an inclusive pandemic response. And on our website at World Enabled, you can download tools on how to understand accommodations and accessibility in pandemic response. The other thing that we've noticed is that I currently serve on the World Economic Forum's Global Future Council on the Connected World. Digital transformation and urbanization are both creating new opportunities to bring people with disabilities into society, but only if we're able to plan with them and to create those kinds of policies that take concepts of the UN Convention and bring them down to the local level, meaning that local governments can actually take the steps to build accessible buses, to deploy standards in construction. So those are the challenges that we're seeing now. Is there's a broader understanding, there's a shift to this hybrid employment, and there is an understanding that a great majority of the people that we lost during the pandemic were people with disabilities and older persons. So it's kind of it's a acceleration, and there's a unique moment of visibility.
Thank
What
you.
do we do with that? What do we do with that now? Is the question. How do we move forward from here?
How do we move forward from here, Michael? Michael, you are with the UNDP, and the UN has the SDGs, and they relate to disability in all aspects. In essence, I mean, Michael and Maya, we know SDGs are about education, reducing poverty, improving governance. I'm not going to list them now, but in your view, Michael, how have the pandemic changed how we see SDGs in relation to aspects related to disability? What's your take on this part?
My friend, you always ask the right question or the right questions, because I just want to give a remark from the question that was previous. And then I will go to the other one, if you allow me.
Sure,
because
please.
they are interrelated together, okay?
Please.
Because
we are here to exchange ideas. Don't worry about the
okay.
rules.
I want to give you a short story of what happened to Lebanon after the Beirut port explosion. Okay, half of our city, and it is more than half of our city. It's 70% of our capital in Lebanon was destroyed. Okay, and with UNDP, we went under the process of building back better. Here, I walked from the UN hub till the Karantina, which is the most damaged public hospital in Lebanon. This is where you saw the children died. And we were dealing on how to build back better and how to build in a more integrated way, because Lebanon is an old city, Beirut is an old city, and we lack the basic norms of accessibility within the architectural infrastructure, okay? I'm using Beirut as an example because this is where we could look at the future. And previously, Hazem, you mentioned that resources might be the gap between disabilities worldwide. To connect two things and this state of mind together. First of all, I don't agree that resources is the reason behind how we treat disability. It is how the decision maker looks at the disability in the past, present, and the future. Yani, learning from our past, working on the present to project the future. And this is what we suffered in Beirut. When we did this meeting with the syndicate of architecture or engineering, and this was the major question. Why don't you build inclusive? Is it costly to build inclusive?
No, it's cheaper.
And the answer is no. You have to think about it from the beginning. This is one. Two, going back to the decision maker, okay? Look at His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum when he said, we want to upgrade people with disability, and this is the number one topic. We are here today talking about it because this one person, this leader, decided to put this topic on the front. Go back, another leader, okay? Khalid bin Hamad Al Khalifa, the head of the Paralympic Committee. You remember last time I was doing my world record in Bahrain at the opening of the Asia Paralympics. You remember? And we had this discussion. Yes. In the opening of his speech, he said, we are temporarily abled people. Eventually, we are going to reach a state of disability.
Absolutely.
So, to answer quickly, Hazem, especially you come from an area that that we are suffering from this lack of integration within our society, and from the lack of vision to the decision, when the decision maker is not including us, or they are not including us within the decision making. This is why we are paying the price, and this is and because we are paying such a price, this is interrelated with the future. So when we influence the decision maker to start including 10 to 15%, and we might, in Syria, we have 20 to 25% due to the war of people, of this category of people. When the decision maker starts to integrate this population within the society, this is when we start looking at the future, and we are talking about economy and numbers. This is where we start talking about economy and numbers. Instead of having 10 to 15 to 20% of your population marginalized, being a burden to your health system, to your system, empower them, integrate them within the society, and let us look together towards a distant future. لأنه نحن, all of us, we're going there. People, whether they have disabilities or whether they don't have disabilities, eventually they will reach this stage where we will be sharing this area together. And speaking about the future, this is where we have the law, the right, and the technology. Assistive technologies, artificial intelligence. But we need people like the Knowledge Summit, like Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid, like those people, to put this from a policy perspective on the middle, and we could all do the change. I don't know if I'm exceeding my time. I'm passionate about this story. This is what we are doing as UNDP. We are working with the decision maker to integrate. We are focusing on the technologies, because we truly believe, especially in Egypt, when we walk the Cairo Walk for Inclusion or Egypt Walk for Inclusion, our target was the decision maker, our target was assistive technologies, because if Egypt, or if the world, and one of the examples was, if Egypt opens its market to accessible tourism and adaptive tourism, they are opening their market to $1 trillion industry and to 1 billion people all over the world. Yes. This is what we mean by the decision making, taking the right decision. And when we talk about assistive technology, my friend, as you said, the phone is an assistive technology, the ramp is an assistive technology, an exoskeleton is assistive. It is also a multi-billion-dollar industry, and we are all going to use it eventually. So this is what I think about it.
I just want you to tell me in 1.5 minutes, not one, not two, the SDGs, the post-pandemic change in SDGs and highlighting their significance in relation to disability.
Okay. If we look on the topic of disability under the rule, and we project them on the SDGs line, we see that 13 out of 17, if not to say 17, 13 of the directly intersects with disability, directly. يعني إذا بدك تحكي anti-poverty, poverty, there is the disability factor. If you want to talk about sustainable cities, there is the disability factor. لأنه disability is a community. It's a portion of the community. لأن عندك temporary disability. عندك people with special needs. يعني شو يعني people with special needs؟ يعني عم تحكي aging community. عم تحكي temporarily disabled people. So when it comes to disability, it's a community that intersects بكل social development goals. والفكرة وين؟ إنه the social development goals are intersected with our future and the future of a humanity. يعني if we don't care about of our waters and if we don't manage the water supply, then humanity will pay, if not in the next 20 years, in the next 30 or 40. If we don't look about sustainability and sustainable energy, we will going to pay. And people with disabilities are intersected. So this is where we go to the decision maker. And now the summit, the Knowledge Summit, because the people with disabilities are directly related in this. If we want to look at the future, my friend, we have to leave no one behind. And this is where it starts, through us communicating, advocating, and influencing the decision maker.
Absolutely. Victor, I want you to tell me about cities. I know you are very passionate about disability, but you are also passionate about cities. And this is where you specialize And you did something on UAE, and we cannot escape talking about UAE and specifically Dubai. We cannot. It's not because the summit is in Dubai. It's just because Dubai is such a model that it's too important not to talk about. So I want you to tell me about your thoughts. What lessons can we learn from Dubai's experience and UAE's experience in general in terms of persons with disabilities? In relation also to the idea of the smart city, cities of the future, governments of the future. How do you see it?
Well, thank you. Now, this brings us to a very good conclusion to this conversation, which is that the world is rapidly urbanizing. That means that we're doubling the footprint of the built environment over the next 20 years. That means that all the space, all the schools, the roads that we've ever built will double in the next 20 years. Now, there's tremendous impacts, obviously, on the climate and on the planet, but there's also tremendous impact on the people. If we don't bring the right standards and the right approaches in terms of universal design, inclusive design, we'll repeat the same barriers and exclusions that we inherited. That's why with the United Nations and with UN Habitat and with many partners around the world, we launched an initiative called Cities for All. And if you look up Cities for All, you'll notice that the Sustainable Development Goals very specifically called number 11, building inclusive, safe, and resilient cities. I was lucky enough to help negotiate that aspects of that Sustainable Development Goal with the hope that in the 15 years between the launch of the SDGs and in this decade of action, we're halfway through this big sprint that we will actually create cities that respect the different modalities, the different ways that people interact with their environment. And smart cities cannot be smart if they're not accessible. Smart cities cannot be smart if they're not inclusive. And that's why the work that I've done with the Mohammed bin Rashid School of Government and a recent book that I published called Building the Inclusive City covers these topics. It covers the topics of how we need to understand that climate change, digital transformation, and inclusion aren't three separate goals. They're one collective effort in terms of creating a future where we want to live. And that's why whether you're a policymaker, whether you're a youth advocate, whether you're an academic, and an investor, a business executive, or work in the media, disability is everybody's business. And I encourage you to check out our resources at worldenabled.com and citiesforall.org and get involved in building cities and signing up to help your city become more inclusive, accessible, and resilient. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Victor. I know we are approaching the end, and we have a few questions. I don't know how much time we have to answer how many questions, but Maya, before we end, there is an important aspect. I want to pick on a point Michael mentioned. There's the software and the hardware. So he was saying that it is important to work on the software and the hardware. If you have hardware without software, it doesn't work. If you have hardware without software, whatever it is, I mixed them up. But I mean, the ideas, the visions are so important, and the resources are important. Vision without resources, it doesn't work. Resources without vision doesn't work. So when you put this AYAMI initiative, you took into account different aspects. I want people who are watching us also I remind myself and the audience that disability is not only physical, It's not only visual impairment, but also we have psychological and other forms of indirect or unclear kinds of disabilities that are not visible to the naked eye. So can you tell me a little bit about, in your AYAMI project, you worked on that aspect. Can you share with us a little bit more on that, please?
Hazem, can you say the question again, please? Can you repeat your question?
You didn't hear me?
We had a voice problem. Sorry. We are
okay, no problem. I'll summarize it quickly. I want you to comment on the aspects related to, since people heard the question, the lengthy part, I want you to comment on the indirect kinds of disabilities and how you handle them, like mental disability or health, psychological health issues, anything that is different than the kind of disability that comes to mind when people think of disability.
Okay.
So we don't have marginalized people within a larger context.
Yeah. So as Michael has mentioned, of course, the SDGs as a whole community, if I recall well, and the pandemic, of course, had slowed down from the work and the advancement of the advancement on achieving the SDGs. So in our work with the youth with disabilities, we noticed that they had like an increase in stress, marginalization, stress, and we had to tackle not only we focused on goal 3, which is the good health and the well-being, and we tackled not only the physical health but also the mental health, and we worked with several specialists on this subject with our youth with disabilities, of course using art, and we had exercises and workshops on this specific theme. So this is how it started, our work, and of course it helped us moving forward with our youth to have a better inclusivity as an overall work.
Okay, that's great, because of course integration, again, you cannot take things separately. There's no way. Disability is part and parcel of our everyday life, and it cannot be tackled as a separate issue. So is environment. I mean, disability, environment, women empowerment, those issues don't recognize political borders or ethnic borders or any kind of divisions. Okay, great. We are approaching the end. I have like 3-4 minutes left, and I have a few questions.
Hazem, I want to ask something just before. I would love, this is something for myself, if I could have a signed copy of Victor's book, Building Inclusive Societies in any way. This will
Why
be
not?
a treasure for us. And
I can answer for him and say you will get it in time, hopefully.
And the opportunity for all those that are watching us, I believe that this will be an amazing book for us to read.
I have made it free. I worked with the publisher, and it is available open access. I'll put the link in this chat, but you can look up Building the Inclusive City, and you will find it available in open access.
I encourage you actually to look up the work of Victor Pineda and Dr. Victor Pineda and Michael Haddad and AYAMI. Because you will find a lot of interesting things. I know this is a very wide-ranging topic. I know we can talk about it for days, but unfortunately there is a time limit, and we will have to end it there. I encourage all participants, all viewers, all people who have been kind enough to follow us, or people who will be watching us after we end this session, because in the age of social media and the new media, this is not just a session that was playing for the last hour, but this session will live online. So I encourage you to continue the conversation amongst yourselves on the different platforms of the Knowledge Summit where this session is posted. Please continue the conversation in the comments box amongst yourselves, because we want to create those kinds of free democratic societies where people can exchange ideas and can exchange knowledge for the betterment of humanity. I am sorry, time is up. So at the end, I have to thank you, all of you, for being with us, dear viewers, and those who are watching us in different parts of the world, in different time zones. I thank Victor for staying with us for that late hour in California. I think it's 11 p.m. now in California, or is it when?
One in the morning, but it's a pleasure to join
Okay,
you.
thank you. So Victor, Dr. Victor Santiago Pineda, thank you so much. Michael Haddad, thank you so much. And Maya Beydoun, thank you so much. With due respect to your full titles and positions, it was my great pleasure to have been with you. My name again is Hazem Ibrahim. I am so grateful to have had this conversation with you all, and hope to see you in the next sessions of this summit and in the future sessions of the future summits also. Thank you, everybody.
And in return, we want to thank you. You are a great moderator.
Thank you so much.
One.
Thank you so much.
Especially on disability. Great one.
Thank you.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.